Welcome, everybody, back to the Fretboard Journal podcast. I'm your host, Jason Verlinde. As always, that's John Rauhaus playing in the background. And today, we are pleased to welcome back, for the third time in what has become, I guess, an annual holiday tradition around here, the one and only Guru Singh. If you have not listened to the first two interviews I've done with Guru Singh, which took place over the last 2 years around this time, he is a third-generation yogi, a spiritual teacher, and he also happens to be a bona fide guitar geek. And his story is unlike any we've ever shared. Go back, listen to those other episodes, dive into what he's doing on Instagram and everywhere else. He lived through Haight-Ashbury. He was friends with Janis Joplin and so many other rock and roll luminaries. And he came out the other side with just a zest for life and with incredible insights and a love for music. And I got to be honest, I like talking to him around this time of year because probably like a lot of you, the holidays can be really stressful. I did not expect us to get into the tangent of the benefits of AI or to talk about Spotify streams. This was all stuff that was not on my bingo card for talking with Guru Singh today. But an incredible interview, full of insights, full of food for thought. And I just love sharing different perspectives. The guitar universe can be so homogenized, and it can be just the same old gear reviews, product announcements, all that stuff. I love that the Fretboard Journal is this incredibly cool platform where we can bring in all these different viewpoints and share some stories with some people who probably were not on your radar before you found the Fretboard Journal. That's what we are good at. We've been at it for 20 years, and I cannot thank you enough for being on this journey with me. It is so much fun. Before I get to Guru Singh, a couple of quick announcements. We are in the middle of an atmospheric river here in Seattle, Washington. Apparently, we're about to be deluged with a ton of rain. We are shipping out all gift orders and all gift subscriptions as quickly as possible. If the weather gets too weird and we just feel like all of your copies are going to be damaged, we may have to hold off on one of our daily shipments. But rest assured, we're getting them all out in the mail. This is your last week, though, to get all of your holiday orders in from us. As you hopefully know, our Luthier's Toolbox book, we are down the last 500 copies, and we've put those on sale. So nab those for a friend as well. We also have our 2026 Fretboard Summit you can now register for at fretboardsummit.org. The dates are August 20th to August 22nd. And if you need any swaying, if you need any convincing, our buddy Rhett Scholl just made a video about the Fretboard Summit on his incredibly popular YouTube channel. The video is called I've Never Seen a Guitar Like This. The thumbnail is a picture of Mike Baranick's electric guitar with the sliding pickup. Go watch that. It's like 30 minutes of what makes the Fretboard Summit so cool and so special. Thank you, Rhett, for doing that. And then last but not least, I just want to quickly thank our sponsors. Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar here in Seattle, Washington, one of the coolest guitar stores you will ever step foot in. You can go to mmguitarbar.com to see what they are up to online. Stringjoy Strings, the new kids on the block when it comes to guitar, mandolin, and banjo strings, but they are doing such amazing work. I've strung all of our Fretboard Journal guitars up with Stringjoy Strings, and I am totally enamored with all of them. They just bring out something new in my guitars that I love. And then last but not least, you're probably like me, you're thinking 2026 is the year you finally become a better guitar player. Go to Peghead Nation, use the discount code Fretboard. You can get your first month free. So many former Fretboard Journal podcast and magazine subjects have been teaching over at Peghead Nation. It really just feels like an extension of our family. So go to Peghead Nation, see what they are up to. Our 58th issue is going to be leaving our printer in less than a week here. So if you need to update your address, shoot me a note, podcast@fretboardjournal.com. We'll try to change your address on file, or if you have any questions. And all new subscribers, you're going to be getting that issue in just a couple of weeks here. So enjoy that. It's a great issue. I'm super excited for you to all see it. Print is not dead. We've been doing this for 20 years. The podcast, the events, everything that we do is just an extension of that beautiful quarterly print magazine that we've been doing for so long. So go to fretboardjournal.com. Join us if you haven't yet. And now, without any delay, the third appearance in what, like I said, has become a holiday tradition, Guru Singh. I hope you enjoy it. I guess this is now a holiday tradition because this is the third year in a row we've talked in the November-December timeframe. And I really appreciate it.
We're going to be back up here in starting in March. So we'll get together in the spring.
Okay.
We'll break tradition.
We'll break tradition. I like that breaking of tradition. Well, let's get into it. What's new with you? I think the last time you and I spoke in this sort of format, there was talk of maybe a TV series around your life, and you were working with. I know you did some music with Seal. Like, what have you been up to in the last 2025? How's that looked?
So the television project is advancing dramatically. We are at a place where we are attaching some names to it, right? The scripting is in really good shape. The pitch deck is in really good shape. And we'll be communicating with some close friends who are themselves names in the industry, because there's roles that I can see. I won't mention names at this moment, but there are roles that I can see some exquisite talent playing,
I love it.
And and there's because I was a rock and roller back in the 60s in San Francisco, the person that is going to play my role, is going to play me, needs to be able to sing and play. But a lot of actors these days are also musicians, and even if they're not a musician, they've usually got a good voice and they can carry a tune. So, we can always, I know that the fellow that played Dylan, he had to learn how to play the guitar, right? And he had to spend some serious focused time learning that. And so that's the nature of the television show. We've expanded Kundalini University. We now have both a 200-hour training and a 300-hour training, and we're working on a 500-hour, which is kind of like a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a doctoral degree. And Seal and I are still, jamming together and, doing our music, and he's got a marvelous collection of guitars also.
I can only imagine. Are you, I know you, because we've talked about this, you're playing guitar pretty regularly. Are you recording yourself too for future songs? Yeah. We did an album last year. I've got pretty much the completed list of mantras and arrangements that, melody lines, or ragas as we would call them in Sanskrit, for the mantras. So we're probably going to be somewhere fall of 26, recording another mantra album. You brought out your oldest guitar. We'll get right into it. What piece of gear, what guitar, what thing have you eyeballed where you're like, oh, maybe I need to add this to the collection?
I've put a stop to any additions to the collection. Those two guitars behind me, those are two 12 strings. The one over here, reversed in the mirror. The one over here that's my forever 12 string, right? And the one over here is one that was gifted to me by a close friend. And the one on this side is, what is it? It's an Ibanez.
Okay.
But it's got a great tone. And what I've determined is that instead of a G on the octave, I've determined that I put a G simultaneous, the same G string, just doubled, because I was liking to have less of that pingy sound of a 12 string, but this one over, I'm trying to see myself
It's okay. The old one, yeah.
Yeah, the one that I've had since the late 60s, that one will always be an octave G.
Yeah. And we've taken photos of that folks can find just by searching for you or Fretboard Journal. We're entering the holiday. We're in the throes of the holiday season right now for 2025. What are you pondering in life?
The guarantee of the soul. And staying out of the way of that guarantee. What I mean by that is that, life is soul and body. And the soul is in a state of constant, here it is if you want it. And our mental body is in a consistent state of, do I get it? How do I get it? Do I deserve it? When can I? All of this duality, the nature of the binaural brain, right? The binaural brain. And in some instances, it works really well. And in other instances, it just interferes. There's that old saying, let go, let God, right?
Sure.
And basically what that is to not just continuously surrender, but to have at least 50% of your time to mimic the heart, which has to force the blood into the body and then completely surrender to allow it to come back. And so that heart center is what I'm focused on this holiday season, is allowing the surrender to reveal the guarantee of the soul. The soul guarantees success. And if we don't interfere, if we make effort to give and then surrender to receive, we in fact find that soul's guarantee to work. That let go, let God actually works. It's a little bit like surfing, if you've ever been on a board. You have to know when to paddle, and then you have to know when to actually rock up on the wave and let the wave carry you. And the same thing in life. You have to know when to make effort. And the greatest effort to make is the effort of giving, the effort of serving. Every successful musician has always known that there's that magic in performance that is not about, can I do it? It's about, let me do it for you. When the performer is serving the audience rather than performing in front of the audience. Because performing is more of a self-look, right? A self-reflective kind of looking into the mirror. Am I okay? Am I okay? Am I okay? But when you're serving the audience, whether it's with your voice or with your instrument, that's when your music really, really, really soars.
I think I told you I took a retreat last month, it was maybe 2 months ago, and they didn't use quite the language that you just did, but instead of soul, it was sort of like your inner spirit, and then your intellect maybe fighting that, because most of us work with our intellect all day long. We're rationalizing things, we're compensating for things, whatever. And the gist of one of the many facets of the thing I took was kind of like trying to find this balancing act, like you just described. How do you turn off that intellect, the brain constantly telling you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be appeasing this, to get into that more giving heartfelt, soulful, spirit side of yourself?
Well, after this many years, decades of deep meditative work, I find the reverse necessary. How do I come out of that invisible space, back into three dimensions, right? But going back in time and remembering how the process developed really was consistency in practice. If you have, regardless of how successful you are in each effort, if you consistently practice, it's just like learning scales on any instrument. You got to slow it down. You got to see it for what it is. You've got to be willing to make all the mistakes in order to ultimately get it right. And then to start to increase the speed. So if we're talking about the difference between, learning how to finger on your keyboard, on your fingerboard, fretboard, depending upon your instrument, and the broader, more esoteric question that you posed, just consider this to be your instrument. The physical body, the emotional body, the mental body. And then eventually what we end up with is coming to that place where we are able to speed up the practice so that it actually starts to operate at a living speed rather than trying to be very slow to get each move correct. And those moves are internal and external both. They're both, internal moves of being able to sense the embodiment, right? To be able to experience the kinesiological sensations in your physiology, to experience or feel the emotion as it's forming so that you have the opportunity to make a decision. Do I want to use this tool right now? Or do I want to use a different tool, emotional tool? And in that way, emotional reactions don't run the life. Emotional choices begin to run the life. And the same thing holds true for the mental space, right? The mental space running the life in a purely logical, intellectual way, or are you going to start to employ the more feminine portion, the magical, right? The less logical, the more magical, the less measurable. And, you start talking like this to the majority of science and their eyes roll and glass over and they just think you're nuts. But in 100, 200 years from now, we're going to be spending time in that realm equal to the time that we spend in this realm. And the thing that's going to actually accelerate this is AI. Because AI is going to take us so quickly through that which we labored over in logic, because that's all AI is, just hyperspeed logic, right? Able to do the logical, intellectual tasks at 1,000, 1,000,000 times faster than we can do them. We think of it as this groundbreaking event. It's groundbreaking in the speed at which it can operate. But it's nothing new. It's still just binary. It's still just ones and zeros. But they're going much faster. Now, the thing about the life of, as you were just mentioning, the spirit, the consciousness, things like, when we start getting into the non-logical, now we're no longer in the binary. We start to get into triangulation or vectoring and actually like airplanes guide themselves through through the air. We now start to triangulate and quadrangulate so that we can begin to truly connect with three-dimensional space and the fourth dimension of time. So often our relationships are hung up in this two-dimensional process, and relationships are not two-dimensional. They're physical. They are visceral. And if we don't allow ourselves to embody that nature, then the head brain does a really bad job of assessing what does the relationship need. The head brain can get it wrong at least 50% of the time. When we were raising our children, there was this saying that I always felt was very applicable. Getting the right shoe on the right foot should be a 50-50 deal. But it looks like it's more like a 90%, 10% wrong foot deal.
I was not expecting my interview with a yogi to include the merits of AI, and I think that was an interesting tangent. So many people, I think even on the Spotify country chart, there's like an AI song, and everyone's viewing it as the demise of art. And there's a reaction to it of like, oh, not AI. And we've all read emails probably this very holiday season that were sent, clearly not written by a human. But in your viewpoint, fast forwarding a little bit, AI is going to do all the clutter, menial work that we waste our time on, and we'll be able to go back deeper inside?
Yeah. What AI is doing at this present moment, it's taking what we do as intellectual humans and, speeds it up to warp speed. And then somebody says, yeah, but it doesn't have feeling. Then you have to ask, where do your feelings come from? Your feelings originate in a if this then that, which is a binary realm, a binary environment. And what AI is doing is it's speeding up the if this then that dramatically. What I find, and actors are going to be hard pushed for business, because the ability to recreate visual and identical audio and response is going to be something that this highly accelerated binary environment of AI is going to be able to achieve. That's going to free us up. It's going to have some downsides, obviously. Everything does, right? But it's going to free us up to not have to take care of all of those things in order for the world to function. And we will be able to spend more time in the theta brain state, which is not an AI realm. AI does not get to go into the dream state. AI does not get to go into the subtle bodies. AI does not get to have the actual visceral experience of an emotion. AI can do all of the things, but it can't cross that barrier. And so, what will we use it for? Obviously, people are going to use it for so many different things. They already are. But after the thrill of the automobile, the thrill of the telephone, the thrill of the television and the radio and all of the other things, which, go back in history, can you imagine the stone cutters that said that parchment was, they were cutting the stone tablets, right? And they said parchment was going to destroy the world, right? And then parchment on a scroll said a bound book is going to destroy the world because everything was scrolls. And then along came the printing press, and everybody said, okay, a non-pen or quill-written book, and the book that was being published in those days was the Bible, is going to, or in other parts of the world, other scriptures. But yeah, people printed up bad flyers, throughout the centuries since the Chinese, not Gutenberg, but the Chinese invented the printing press. But everything settles out. Everything settles out. Can't you remember when we would have to, in order to get a flyer printed, we'd have to either paste it up or mock it up somehow and then take it to a print shop?
Of course. Yeah.
And now you just have a laser printer and it prints anything out. Things are so, advancements are so meaningful when we use them right.
But don't you think, just to play devil's advocate, as I think a lot of musicians are fearful that this is going to take away their work and their livelihood.
It is.
And as a musician yourself, one could easily foresee a time in the not so distant future where someone says, I want music kind of like Guru sings, but let's give him a Bruce Springsteen voice.
Right.
And then they cue it up and the computer generates it, and not only are you missing out on the whatever royalties or whatever revenue, but you're also missing out on that actual connection that might lead to longer term things.
We're already missing out on all the royalties. I mean, we don't get that much from Spotify or Apple Music anymore.
Sure.
And, we don't get to sell any product. The only way that a musician now gets anything is in performance.
Yeah.
And, okay, so they'll hologram the performance, and that's in the future too, but it's not going to be the same. People are going to say, I'm tired of these holographic performances. I want a live performance again. But you have to remember also, people thought that the phonograph record, and obviously in the early days of the phonograph record, they sounded pretty awful, pretty scratchy. In those old 78s. But when could people listen to music? You could only listen to music if you went to a place where music was being played. And then all of a sudden came the phonograph record. And, they merchandised it and made money off of phonograph records, and that was another way of doing it. And then, of course, that evolves. These are the evolution is unstoppable. What I believe is that we are going to determine other ways of sharing with each other that, and let's face it, the capital chase is going to come to a close. What's happening now with, the coming of trillionaires, right?
Yeah.
And the mass poverty. It's going to be a French Revolution all over again. The idea of this financial aristocracy that is not concerned about the health of the masses, the food for the masses. This is the way a species destroys itself. The oldest species on the earth are the old growth forests, right? Hundreds of millions of years old. And the mycelium that runs under the forest floors. They take care of each other. They do not have a competitive capital market. And in that realm, capital would be, sunlight and mineral extraction from the soil. They don't have a competitive environment there. They have a shareable environment. And when we stop making capital the reward for art, the reward for music or art or writing or anything, when we stop making that the reward and we begin to share the needs and let the reward be the emotion that comes along with it, there's going to be a reckoning that the binary nature of computation isn't going to be able to match. I mean, let's face it, a lot of musicians want to go back to the 2-inch tape.
Sure.
Because the roundness, obviously 2-inch tape has its limitations. You can't do as much. And already, without the need for 2-inch tape, we don't spend as much time in the studio because it's like, okay, let's pitch correct, right? Let's change that we missed a beat there. Let's change that digitally. It's already happening.
You, through your position and your locations, you are often in Seattle, you're often down in Los Angeles. You have followers who are very much on the forefront of the tech sector, as well as, probably many affluent followers. Have you developed this theory that things are fundamentally going to be okay with tech and the human race from talking to them? Or is this kind of just your core belief? Or what do you know that maybe the rest of us don't know?
Yes, the answer is yes, I have been talking to them. And I'm aware of that the future is not always a byproduct of the past. And the way that we enable the future to not be a direct descendant of the past is through that creative innovation. Musically, if we go back 1,300 years, there was a period of time in Western music that it was heresy to perform any triad or any harmonic interval that wasn't an octave or a unison, because some religious character, primarily it's blamed on Pope Gregory, but who knows where it actually came from, because he was just branded with it, Gregorian chanting, right? But at the same time, they also restricted the fine art community. You couldn't put shadow in your art, so everything became flat and two-dimensional. While that was taking place, other parts of the world were still innovating in a much different way with, triads, harmonic intervals, even non-harmonic intervals that were, for the purpose of tension. it settled out. Come, the Renaissance and the Baroque period, all of a sudden people started to break the religious law and began to innovate again. And then towards the end of the 19th century, the 1800s, with Debussy and some of the other experimental composers, the birthplace of jazz with honky-tonk, involved rhythmically. All of a sudden, Western music began to become an adventure again. So no matter what tried to stop progress and the evolution of creativity, it didn't last. And each time that it's come into play as humanity has advanced, it's lasted less of a period of time. From nearly 1,000 years, went down to 500 years, goes down to 100 years, goes down to 50 years. In today's world, things are moving dramatically. Can you remember in the 70s when hip-hop was just this weird, way off in the corner? And now you cannot see, if you see 5 commercials on TV, hip-hop beat is going to be in at least 3 of the 5 commercials. It is equal to Bhangra out of North India. It is equal to a lot of the Arabic rhythms that come out of the Middle East. So what's happening in AI, I consider it to be a little bit like, if you remember back 25 years to Y2K, everybody thought the world was going to come to an end because, the calendars were changing. And I had a friend who was a programmer for Paramount Studios, the computer programmer for Paramount Studios, was making $250,000 a year just to try to save their butt, and then come to find out it didn't need to be saved, right? So this AI is going to be very disruptive, and we will survive. The one thing that we have to really focus on even more than AI is what I was speaking of earlier, and that is stop interfering with the soul's guarantee of success. Whatever we want to call soul, spirit, consciousness, higher awareness, you name it's I'm not talking religion here. I'm not talking orthodoxy here. I'm talking in a sectarian way that whatever you consider that which is of a higher nature guarantees success if we allow it to. Doesn't mean we don't have to actively participate. We don't just sit around and it's going to happen. But we also have to be able to surrender. And the key to intuition, the key to becoming psychic and intuition and knowing what to do before it has to be done, is a process of being vulnerable, really being vulnerable. And that means that you have to feel safe in a danger zone. Right?
And the danger zone is right now.
Danger zone is life. Life
Right.
is a danger zone.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on, I think there was a promise with social media that it was going to bring us all together. And now people, I think, especially with, certainly with what was Twitter, but also Facebook and Instagram, as the algorithms take over, people are like, I'm not even seeing my actual friends on here anymore. And I know they're posting, the robots have decided I should just see all these ads. do you feel like there's hope for new connections, both with people we already know and are longing to be connected with, as well as new people, like through AI and all that stuff? Or
frustration is a huge stimulant, isn't it? Because what you're talking about is the same way we learned how to walk and talk. Because let's face it, when we were very, very young, and, all we had to do was lay around and, suck on our mother's breast, we were frustrated because we saw people walking, we saw people talking. And so we tried to walk, and we fell more times than we could stand. But we kept, through the frustration and determination, we kept changing. Social media will change because of the incredible frustration that it produces. There's actually nothing social about social media.
yeah.
It's very cold. I don't tend to text people. I call them, because I want to hear their voice, and I want to be able to share my voice as well. But we will come to a place where not everyone, but a lot of people are moving off of Facebook, moving off of Instagram, because it no longer gives them what it once gave them, because it's become, again, the capital chase. It's become the way in which a large corporation can continue to increase its revenue. And I mean, that's the same thing that happened with the automobile. We didn't travel as far. The airplane, we traveled further. So, my wife and I don't fly anymore. We were flying 2 weeks out of every month, but we choose not to go through an airport because it's no longer the experience. And so adaptation, making wise choices. There's some great writings that really took place in the 19th century, in the 1800s, about the dynamics of crowds, because with democracy coming on, the dynamics of crowds and how do you influence the voter base, right, was becoming a thing. And, as crowds, we make some good choices and a whole lot of bad choices. And that means that we have to go back to individual creativity. And frustration will lead us back there. That's to go back to your point of, origin in this section of our conversation. Do I believe that, AI won't ruin the world? And I'm very, very certain that it won't, because it will go as far as we let it go until we get so frustrated that we want to get something different. The abandonment of social media is not massive, but it's significant. People are going back to other ways of connecting with their friends. They're forming groups. They're forming WhatsApp groups that doesn't have to be interfered with by an algorithm.
Are you thinking about some of these new tools and approaches when it comes to, you were talking about your own education series? Are you thinking beyond, Facebook ads and Instagram and maybe coming up with some creative ways that 20 years ago didn't exist?
Yeah. I used to teach in person, all the time. And as I said, my wife and I were in airplanes 2 weeks out of every month, flying all over the world. And now I teach hundreds in classes. It will ultimately be thousands. And ultimately beyond that, even larger, because we're consistently improving the way in which we can have music and multiple instruments and the expression of how do you do these various things, and people from all over the world, once they learn to participate through the electronic media, they will begin to experience the experience. Right now, we're having to change our sensitivity from wanting it to be in person to being able to be satisfied with the same embodied experience done through electronic media. And so I know that just like, it took me several years to develop, if you could see down around me, I've got sliders. It looks like a recording studio, and I've got all these ways of setting up my art so that it fits exactly in half the screen, none of which I was able to get all around the world in person because I couldn't carry my large art. I couldn't, and we couldn't have the sophistication of the recording studio broadcasting at every moment, right? You were at the mercy of some local studio's PA system, right? Which may or may not have been great. And so what we end up with here is let's use the advancements wisely and make the most out of it, and let's figure out the ways that these technological advancements, including AI, can develop a real future. One perfect example of something that I've just discovered, and I'm feeling as inspired as I was the day I turned 16 and got my driver's license, right? And that is that I have notes, I have file boxes, I probably have 50 to 70 file boxes, right?
Sure.
Filled with 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, in file folders from back in the late 70s, early 80s, all through the 90s, all the way up to today, where every one of my workshops, every one of my lectures, every one of my classes had a script that I would, when I was teaching, I would spread it out around my position, almost like a podium, but you're sitting in easy pose. And I never threw any of those notes away. AI can read my handwriting and turn it into text. I can take a 45-year-old file folder with 10 handwritten in mind map way, not just stay in between the lines, but in mind map ways, with all different kinds of writing in the margins and all of that. And I can scan it and put it into AI, and AI will read it and put it out for me. Now, I can take all of that material. I can spend 2 or 3 years. I can have my team scanning this stuff, and we can turn it into actual usable data that doesn't just have to be a one-time. So there are going to be ways that AI is used medically. There's going to be ways. That's one of the areas that AI is going to be the most beneficial, because radiologists, right? They spend days looking at the slices from an MRI study to see if there's any cellular anomalies, right? What takes them days will take AI, and when we get to quantum AI, it'll take 2 seconds.
How far, just because I know all the musicians listening to this are going to kill me if I don't ask. How far are you willing to take that? Are you willing to let AI impersonate you and release that as audio, or are you just happy with the text has been documented and saved, it was going to just crumble away as paper and now it can be put out into the world? How far are you going to take it?
I will have to listen to the audience,
yeah,
to answer that. If the audience says, Guru Singh, I would love to be able, because I've had my image and my video image and my audio image reproduced on an AI platform, and they're working with it so that people can ask a question, and then based on anything that I've ever said,
wow,
an answer will be drawn from that, right? I think that's marvelous.
Yeah.
As far as musicians, what I think is a fair response, let's compete. Let's demonstrate what AI is lacking. Let's make it fun rather than ominous, because we are not going to stop it.
Yeah.
We are not going to stop it. It's funny. There was an AI, I was getting Indian music and Christmas carols off of YouTube, right, to play in the house, right? And, you screen and there's this thing, and all of a sudden there's this thing, Jimi Hendrix visits Mr. Rogers.
Okay.
Right? And so I click on it and I go, that can't be right. Because Jimmy and I, we knew each other back in the day.
I was going to say, you might be the one person who maybe met Mr. Rogers and Jimi Hendrix, but maybe you only met Jimmy.
And Jimmy was playing a right-handed guitar. And that was not Jimmy. But they created this thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of attempts being made.
Sure.
The system that I've launched my voice into and my image into, my video image into, it's still Etch-a-Sketch, It's not there yet. My voice, it's not there yet. They wanted my book, Buried Treasures, to be an audible book, and I haven't had time to read it. So a friend of mine said, let me try putting a chapter into AI and giving it to you. And I listened to it, and my wife and I listened to it, and I went, okay, well, it sounds like me 60% of the time, but the 40% of the time that it doesn't, the pacing is not proper, and just ruins the experience.
And we are in early days for all this, as you said.
Yeah.
Like, this is the Etch-a-Sketch. But, you seem fundamentally optimistic in nature about everything. And I think there's a lot of people who right now are looking at what's going on globally, politically, and going like, this is a giant mess, and it's going to take most of my lifetime, if not all of it, to figure out. How do you stay optimistic, in terms of just things will get better even in my lifetime, or maybe...
No, they will. They will. We're in an accelerated cycle. If you look at the Mayan calendar, the early stages in the Mayan calendar was 2+ billion years long. When the Mayan calendar came to its close in, 2011, 2012, that 2+ billion years had been reduced to 12 seconds. That was how the cycle was completing itself. A cycle that took 2+ billion was now 12 seconds. So cycles, you think politically, you think, the rise of fascist attitudes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the fascist attitudes that arose in the 20th century, what did they take? They took probably 25, 35 years to complete their cycle. Mm. This one's going to complete itself in about 5 years. This thing is already developing on the other side. For every action, Newton's third law of motion, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Mm-hmm. The reaction is phenomenal. Not being covered so much by media because media has kind of been co-opted at this moment. But you dig down in there and 7 million people turned out to the last event, right? Mm-hmm. Human beings are fundamentally capable of restoring justice. And we will. We will.
I love that. I love your words of encouragement. How do you celebrate Christmas and the New Year? Do you have a little ceremony, or is it just another?
No, we celebrate everything in its own way, right? Celebrate Christmas, celebrate Hanukkah, celebrate everything, right? Whatever the reason to celebrate, we will celebrate. And that is a very important position to be in. I believe every path, every religious path, every spiritual path has great relevance and it has importance to people. And I see them all from a perspective of yes, rather than a perspective of no. That perspective of yes, and in that inclusive perspective is much more joyful. And celebration is important.
Yeah. Do you make New Year's resolutions?
Think about on all the New Year's, because, spring equinox is a New Year's and, winter solstice is a New Year's, and then there's a lot of people on December 31st celebrating, so you get onto that wave too. So all of the New Year's, and then there's the Persian New Year and the Jewish New Year and the Chinese New Year. We celebrate them all, and we do resolutions. And you think of the word manifest. Mana means the brain mind. We have a brain and the universe has a mind, right? The universal mind. And manifestation. Festation means celebration, festival. Right? So when you get yourself into a celebratory nature, often things tend to be working out. That's the nature of not only celebration, but it's also the nature of love. I'm going to have to push on from this, but let's pick up there the next time that we meet. I really enjoy discussing with you, and I really enjoy how you conduct yourself.
Well, thank you, Guru Singh, as always. I love that every time we talk, whether we're talking about AI or whatever, I don't know whether you're doing this for our audience or not, it somehow comes back to music, which is just amazing. That just could be your spirit. But music seems to permeate everything that we talk about, and I love that. So thank you.
Yeah, me too. Be well.
You too. All right, that was my conversation with Guru Singh. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly love talking to Guru Singh every time I can. He is going to be back in Seattle in the springtime. He kind of splits his time between LA and Seattle. And we'll get him into the office again. This was a Zoom call, but we'll get him back here at Fretboard Journal HQ. We'll talk guitars some more. Till next time.